There is a stretch of high country in the southern Appalachians where darkness does not arrive all at once. It seeps. It climbs from the valley floors and fills every gap between the hemlocks until you realize the light did not leave. It was swallowed. Most people who visit these mountains come for wildflowers and waterfalls. They drive scenic loops, snap photographs near overlooks, and leave before supper. They never stay long enough for the mountains to notice them. But the mountains do notice. And the stories I have gathered over years of returning to this range suggest that whatever lives in the fog has a long memory and a habit of making itself known only when the audience is small. We are not starting at the top. We are starting underground, somewhere in the backcountry, scattered through laurel thickets and rhododendron tunnels. There are holes in the earth that do not appear on geological surveys. Old-timers call them glory holes, natural sinkholes, where the limestone gave way centuries ago. But a handful of locals insist certain openings are not natural at all. They point to tool marks on the rock lips, to timber shoring that rotted to powder decades back, and to a man they only ever call the Dutchman. His real name has been argued over in every diner and barbershop within 50 miles. What everyone agrees on is this: he lived alone above a creek fork sometime before the Civil War. He never farmed, he never logged, and he always had money. Silver coins mostly pressed with dates that did not match anything minted in the Carolinas or Tennessee. He paid his debts, spoke to no one about his work, and walked trails at hours when sensible people were asleep. After he died, a neighbor found a leather pouch stitched shut with wire hidden beneath the hearthstone. Inside were nuggets of raw ore and a scrap of paper with distances scratched in pencil, but no starting point. Searches began immediately and have not stopped since. Every generation produces a new believer, a new map drawn on a napkin, a new theory about a passage that supposedly winds beneath the state boundary and opens into a chamber where the walls shine. Nobody has found it. That is precisely why the story refuses to die. Every failed expedition adds another layer to the myth, the way silt adds another inch to a riverbed. The gold is always just past the next bend, always behind one more curtain of fog. I spoke with a retired forest ranger near Bryson City who told me he once followed a set of boot prints into a narrow ravine and found a freshly dug pit 4 feet deep. Whoever made it had left a lantern still warm. He called out. Nothing answered except a sound he described as stone grinding on stone, deep below his feet. He filled the hole, marked the coordinates, and never went back. That kind of restraint is rare. Most people who feel something strange in these mountains push deeper. Which brings us to the oldest layer of belief in this landscape, one that predates every European name on every map. The Cherokee who lived here for thousands of years understood the peaks and hollows as inhabited territory, not wilderness. Among their traditions is a class of beings that translates roughly as the immortals. They are not ghosts, they are not gods. They resemble ordinary people in every detail, except that they exist on a schedule of their own choosing. You might pass one on a trail and never know it. Or you might be stumbling through a whiteout blizzard on a high bald and feel a hand on your elbow, guiding you downhill toward shelter, only to find when you turn around that no one is there, and the snow has already covered any tracks. Elders describe them as protectors, bound to the land itself. They do not seek attention, they do not punish without cause. but they enforce a kind of etiquette that the forest remembers even if the hiker does not. Stay quiet after sundown. Do not hurl stones into dark water. Do not mock a sound you cannot identify. In late April, when the trilliums push through the leaf litter along certain ridgeline trails, some Cherokee families still regard the blooms as markers, quiet signals that the old inhabitants are awake and watching. I have walked those trails in spring, and I will tell you, the flowers do appear in patterns that feel deliberate, clustered at intersections, lining the edges of clearings that have no other reason to exist. Respect is not optional here. It is structural. Drop south from those high balds into a wide valley ringed by some of the most photographed peaks in the east, and you reach a place that looks like a postcard but breathes like a requiem. An open meadow stretches between forested ridges. Deer graze in the morning mist. A loop road carries slow traffic past log buildings and iron gates. One of those buildings is a church, small, white, built from hand-sawn lumber in the years after Reconstruction. The congregation that raised it had already split from a larger body over doctrinal disagreements, so even the nails carry a whiff of stubbornness. Step inside on a summer afternoon and the heat presses close. Look up. The ceiling planks still hold the ghosts of handprints, literal impressions left in drying resin by the men who lifted each board into place. Their fingerprints have outlasted their names. By day, the valley is gentle. After dark, the geometry changes. Sound behaves strangely in a bowl of mountains. A car door closing half a mile away can arrive at your ear as a gunshot. Your own breathing can return to you from behind, reflected off a ridge that should be too far to bounce anything back. Visitors who stay past sunset near the church report a figure visible for less than a heartbeat, standing flush against the exterior wall, features indistinct, posture rigid, and then gone as though the wood absorbed it. No two witnesses agree on gender or clothing. They only agree on the feeling afterward, a certainty that whatever they saw was not passing through. It was embedded. Continue the loop road, and you reach a cemetery the time has been slowly erasing. Headstones list names that appear on land grants from the early 1800s. Iron fences lean at angles that suggest decades of freeze and thaw. In full daylight, the place reads as historical, educational, and peaceful. But locals avoid it after dusk, not from superstition but from experience. A retired school teacher named Dorothy told me she visited one October evening to photograph lichen on the oldest stones and watched a pale shape drift between two family plots, pause, and dissolve into the tree line. She did not scream. She said it felt less like terror and more like interrupting a private conversation. Small luminous points have been reported near the graves, closest to the forest edge, hovering a few inches above the grass and winking out the moment someone steps closer. The rational explanations are familiar. Foxfire, bioluminescent fungi, reflected headlights from the road. None of them account for the silence that descends just before the lights appear. A silence so total that your own pulse becomes the loudest thing in the county. A one-lane road, not far from one of the park's busiest entrances, winds through old-growth forest along a creek that moves fast enough to drown out thought. Log cabins crouch under tulip poplars so tall they vanish into canopy. This was homestead country before it was parkland. Families cleared just enough ground to survive, grew what they could and buried what they lost within sight of their front doors. The road follows their footpaths, and the footpaths follow the water, and the water follows gravity down through a darkness that thickens with every switchback. The story attached to this stretch involves hoofbeats, not recorded hoofbeats, not metaphorical hoofbeats. The sound of an animal striking packed earth, rhythmic and close, heard by drivers on damp evenings when the windows are down and the engine is idling. No horse appears, no source presents itself, but the rhythm matches a walking gait exactly, and it stays alongside the vehicle for longer than comfort allows. Then comes the woman, pale fabric, bare feet, moving at the edge of the headlights with a stride that never varies. One account from a man named Orrin, recorded in a community history project in the 1970s, describes offering a ride to a girl he assumed was a neighbor's daughter walking home from a dance. He said she climbed onto his wagon without speaking. He felt the boards shift under her weight. When he turned to ask her name, the seat was empty and the air smelled of hearth ash. He told the interviewer he did not feel frightened. He felt chosen, as though the road had selected him for a message he was not equipped to translate. That inability to translate is, I think, the engine that keeps all of these stories running. High above the valley, reachable only by boot leather and determination, a collection of rough cabins clings to a rocky summit. The lodge has operated since the mid-1920s without electricity or paved access. Supplies arrive on the backs of llamas. Guests sleep under wool blankets and read by the amber glow of oil lamps. The altitude strips away every modern buffer. Up there you hear your own heartbeat against the silence of spruce and fir, and you become aware of how thin the barrier is between comfort and exposure. The recurring account from overnight guests follows a pattern that varies only in small details. Someone wakes in the dead hours, not from a nightmare, but from the sensation of being observed. At the foot of the bed or near the window stands a small figure, motionless, watching with an attention that feels neither hostile nor friendly, but absolute. Guests describe lying still, blinking, trying to resolve the shape into a shadow or a coat hung on a hook. It does not resolve. And then between one blink and the next, it is simply not there. No retreating footsteps, no door latch, just a room that feels suddenly emptier than a room should feel. A longtime employee reportedly told a guest at breakfast that the summit has its own way of sorting people. Some are welcomed, some are tolerated. Most never know the difference. Below the peaks, the Park-esque boundary towns carry their own residue. One settlement in particular owes its name to a man whose personality was loud enough to outlast his welcome. He arrived in the mid-1800s, set up a trading post, inserted himself into local politics and religion with equal aggression, and alienated nearly every family in the hollow. He was eventually expelled, but by then the community had already adopted his surname for official correspondence and postal service. The name stuck. The man did not. His presence lingers in anecdote and some say in less explainable ways. Near where his store once stood, people describe a sharp atmospheric shift, a feeling of hostile scrutiny that arrives without warning and lifts just as suddenly. Knocking sounds with no visible source. The sensation of a hand almost but not quite touching your shoulder. Whatever residue he left, it carries the same confrontational energy that got him run out of town in the first place. A different kind of haunting clings to a building that once served as a wedding venue and social hall in a green river valley east of the main park corridor. The story is deceptively simple. A bride arrived. A groom did not. The celebration curdled into silence. What happened to the woman afterward depends on who is telling the story, but the building itself seems to have memorized the afternoon. Guests at the restaurant that now occupies the space describe a localized drop in temperature near one particular doorway, a sound like fabric brushing a banister, and an overwhelming wave of anticipatory sorrow. Not grief for something lost, but the worst kind. Grief for something that never arrived. On windless nights, the staff hear a single footfall on the upper landing. They have checked the plumbing. They have checked the foundation. They have stopped checking. The creature stories are harder to pin down because they move. Across the full breadth of southern Appalachia, families share accounts of something large and wrong moving through the timber after dark. The origin most often cited is indigenous, a tale of transformation and transgression, a woman who crossed a boundary meant to be absolute and paid with her human shape. What remained was powerful, fast, and furious. Settlers adopted the legend and bent it to fit their own fears. The details stay remarkably consistent across 2 centuries. A scream that belongs to no cataloged species, a silence that precedes it like the air being sucked from a room, and animals that refuse to move toward the sound. A woman I will call Ruth, because she asked me not to use her real name, told me she was hanging laundry on her back porch in 2011 when she heard something she first took for a woman screaming in the woods behind her property. Her 2 hounds, both experienced tracking dogs, flattened against the ground and would not stand. The scream came again, closer, and she said the quality of it changed, became layered, as if 2 throats were producing a single sound. She went inside, locked the door, and did not open it until full daylight. Biologists will tell you cougars and bobcats produce screams that can freeze blood at close range. That explanation satisfies everyone who has never heard the sound in person. Before any park existed, before tourism, before even the trading posts, these hollows were full of ordinary life. Corn grew in bottomland fields. Hogs rooted under chestnut trees. Clothes dried on wire strung between porch posts. Children walked barefoot to one-room schools along creek paths that are now hiking trails. When the federal government drew the park boundary, thousands of families were relocated. Their houses collapsed. Their fields went feral. Their fruit trees still bear apples that no one picks. But the rhythm of that old life left a mark deeper than any foundation. Campers report the click of a latch where no structure stands. Hikers smell wood smoke on trails miles from any fire ring. A faint amber glow drifts through the trees along a route that once connected a homestead to a mill, following every turn as though carried by someone who walked it 10,000 times and could do it blind. These are not dramatic hauntings. They are echoes of routine so deeply worn into the landscape that the mountains play them back the way a creek plays back the shape of every stone it has ever touched. I have spent nights in these woods where the only company was the sound of my own breathing and the occasional pop of a cooling campfire. On one of those nights, deep in a valley where the nearest paved road was 7 miles of switchback away, I heard a child laugh. Clear, bright, close. I sat up and stared into blackness so complete it felt solid. Nothing moved. No second sound followed. I told myself it was a fox. I have heard foxes. It was not a fox. The mountains do not explain themselves. They collect, they hold, they repeat. and the fog that never quite lifts is not weather. It is a curtain, drawn by something that prefers an audience of one, standing very still, listening hard, in the dark, between the ridgelines where the oldest stories live.